right, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, morning everyone. Welcome to the Shawnee County Board of County Commissioners. Today is June 13th. I'm the chairman this year. My name is Aaron Mays, representing District 3. On my left is Commissioner Bill Rippon, representing District 1. On my right is Commissioner Kevin Cook, representing District 2. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Morning. Madam Clerk, first item, please.
First item is item 3, consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda this morning. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Next item, please.
Item 4, new business. A, County Clerk number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Okay, under Bridge Project, King Construction Company, Inc., $117,474.22 is for bridge on Southeast Laurel Road over Tecumseh Creek. Under Detention Facilities, Timekeeping Systems, Inc., $40,015 is for Guard 1 Plus system. Under Special Public Works, Laird Noller Ford, Inc., totaling $71,708 is for 2 Ford F-250 trucks. Under Solid Waste Recycling, Rarick Pacific Company, totaling $86,602.60 is for refuse totes. Total vouchers for June 13th, 2022 is $2,019,263.32. There's no questions or comments. I'll move for approval of the vouchers.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion made by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Next item, please.
Item H2, correction orders.
I'll move approval of the correction orders.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Next item, please.
Item B, Planning Department number 1, public hearing and consider approval of resolution number 2022-44, a major amendment to the Aldersgate Village Master Plan Master PUD Plan to allow up to 20 additional single-family residential dwelling units, facilitating orderly growth of homes on the campus and in response to market demand. The cul-de-sac will be named Southwest Rogers Road and located north of Southwest Asbury Road or Drive in Mission Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joni Fedani, Interim Director of the Planning Department. I wanted to make a quick announcement prior to starting with item 1, which is the day that we had this planning meeting, May 9. We actually had a 4th item that the applicants elected to defer action at this point. They've asked us to continue it to a later date, and I didn't know if anybody appeared today for that item, but that's for Sunrise Holdings. It is a rezoning from an RR1 to a commercial, just so we have deferred it for an indefinite period of time, and so if anybody is here for that matter, we won't be moving forward on that one today. So for our first item, as the clerk mentioned, this is United Methodist Homes, Aldersgate. We are looking at a major amendment to the PUD master plan beginning back in 1977. As you can see from the zoning, it's coming from 77. This one is for 2 single-family residences. It was approved by the Planning Commission 6-0. The residences are going to keep up with size, style, and finishings of other homes within the Aldersgate Village area, and it will complement the neighborhood and use. This will help facilitate orderly growth of the campus, respond to a high market demand, and they had indicated that the cul-de-sac for which these homes will be placed on is going to be named Southwest Rogers Road. You can see here the Aldersgate United Methodist Village. This location will be, here's Asbury right here. It's going to be up in this general vicinity right in here. This shows the map for which all of the notifications are sent out. You can see a high number of notifications go out for this particular property because of the location of it. We sent out over 400 letters, and we didn't get any commentary back on this matter. We did have one person show up at the public hearing for the Planning Commission, and that was the pastor for the Susanna Wesleyan Church, and they were there in support of the matter. In yellow, you can see Southwest Rogers Road. That's going to be the cul-de-sac and the location of it. Staff findings, we determined that this proposal would satisfy the golden criteria and is appropriate for senior living development. I had no concerns with the additions of these homes. We recommended approval as long as they submit a Class A drainage plan to Public Works ahead of time, which I do believe that they've already done, and then follow through with any other requirements that they may have through state and local agencies. And again, the Planning Commission action, they voted 6-0 to approve recommendation, and I have no further comments. I will put this back to the map and allow the applicant to come up and speak.
We will need to have a public hearing.
What's that? Public hearing?
Public hearing.
All right. I'll move that we open a public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. We're in a public hearing. Welcome.
Good morning. Angela Sharp with Bartlett and West, representing Aldersgate Village. As Joni said, this is another great project on the Aldersgate campus that is in response to a market need that they have on the campus for additional housing units. And these are going to be their upper scale units, villas and cottages that are very similar, actually the same floor plan and finishes as those that they've recently built on the campus. So they're pretty excited about this project and have a number of folks on the waiting list for it. These particular cottages and villas will have some awesome views of the wooded areas and the ponds that are on the campus. And so that's the reason for the high demand on these. So I will answer any questions that you have. And Jerry Nye, the CEO and president, is also here to talk with you.
All right. Any questions?
None. No.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor or in opposition?
Good morning. I'm Jerry Nye, CEO of Aldersgate Village. This is a fantastic project, and we're looking forward to it. Just speak to it very, very quickly. We do want to clarify that it's for 20 additional units, not 2. So that was just a mistake on the slide. So it's 20 additional, and that's what's on the agenda. Very, very excited about this project because it does meet a market demand, and not only is it a great project for Aldersgate and the people in senior housing that we serve, but also this will very often and almost in every case free up other housing. As you know, in the county, the city, and the region has a housing crisis. This is our way of meeting that demand, and we don't have any more cul-de-sacs, so we're having to build one, and that's why the major amendment. This will be fantastic. We already have 4 of these reserved, and we have a number of people on the waiting list. So we expect good results, but also it will free up other housing for someone else if we can get these built and occupied. And then they'll sell their homes, and the chain continues. So it's a wonderful project for the county, the city, and the region. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Nye? Yep.
During the hearing, there was the pastor of the Susanna Wesley United Methodist Church, which had requested a sidewalk along Osprey and Oxford Road to 29th Street. Any concerns with that request or consideration for it?
No, and yes, that was a request. No concerns. We just need to get into the engineering of the project and stuff a little more before we can determine how that's going to lay out. But Aldersgate, as far as we're concerned, we're all for that and hope to connect those dots as soon as we can.
So, I know the sidewalks, I mean, having that accessibility is a big thing.
It is, and just the exercise and the green space and things like that that is so necessary and needed and wanted. Yes, we're all about that, and we're going to try to work cooperatively with Susanna Wesley and see if we can get that done at some point when the time is right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
None.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I will move that we close the public hearing and approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Next item, please.
Item B2, public hearing and consider approval of resolution number 2022-45, a conditional use permit to allow construction of a solar farm on a 13.71 acre property located at 4306 Southwest Auburn Road, zoned RR1, residential reserve in Minnochan Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shawnee, Interim Director of the Planning Department. Item number 2 is the first of 2 solar farms that you will be hearing this morning. This one is located near what would be 41st and Auburn Road. 41st at this time is not through to the east of Auburn Road, but may be developed at some point in the future. It is a conditional use permit, so this would remain zoned RR1, and then the conditional use permit would allow you to put conditions on this solar farm. It's a 13.71 acre farm. Currently, the property is undeveloped. It does adjoin 2 electric substations to the south, which is the primary reason for the location of this solar farm. It is a joint effort between Evergy and Free State Electric Cooperative. This matter was approved 4-2 by the Planning Commission, and they did include some modified conditions in comparison to what staff had recommended to begin with. The solar farm consists of 5,720 solar panels. Maximum height of those panels is 12 feet. They are on a single axis tracker that faces to the south and then moves east to west to follow the sun. The electrical panel in the center would have a maximum height of 15 feet. The entire area would be enclosed by a chain link fence. The height of that would be 6 feet with a barbed wire on top. And as you'll see in the conditions set by the Planning Commission, they asked to have a barrier wall installed along Auburn Road. So for the entire stretch of Auburn Road, that would be 8 to 10 feet. And then also a barrier wall on the north end near the most northern neighbor, who is only about 70 feet away. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the future here. After installation, the ground would be planted with native grasses to help with soil erosion. Construction would begin essentially immediately and go for the rest of the year. As you can see, here's the location off of Auburn Road. The one little substation is right here, and then the massive one down here. I'm going to actually go back and point out the neighbor to the north here. So if you notice right here, this property, there's a neighbor and a house right here. And so this became the topic of most of the discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, where the location of this neighbor was. Staff's understanding prior to the meeting is that that neighbor had been consulted, and I do believe that that's true. However, I believe that there was some disagreement in regards to whether the neighbor was in agreement with the solar farm plan. And here you'll see all the notifications that were sent out in regards to the subject property. A couple of those are owned by Westar and Caw Valley Electric, so some of the people who were involved in this project are within that notification as well. And then the owner of the property that's being used are John and Pamela Egan. They currently own the property and some of the property to the east. My understanding is that if this conditional use permit goes through, then the land will be purchased for the purpose of this project. It's not a lease, it is a purchase. Okay, now, to make things a little bit confusing, I'm going to present 2 different site plans. The first here is the site plan that was presented to the Planning Commission. This is how it appeared to them that night. It shows how close the solar panels are to the property line. The dark line that appears here is where the fence is going to go, but that is the property line. So if you see how close the solar panels come to the property line and where that fencing would go. The original proposal by the applicant is that they would continue to have this chain link fence along here, and they wanted to put privacy slats within that area to help block that from the neighbor. And then this here is Auburn Road, and you see that it does set back a little ways from Auburn Road. The planning commissioners wished to have a barrier wall installed there, so that would be one thing to consider. And I know the applicant has some proposals for you to consider in the alternative today. This shows just a little bit better picture version versus just the site plan. So for public input, prior to the planning commission meeting, we did not get contacted on this matter from anybody at all. We weren't exactly sure what would happen at the meeting. However, we did have a couple of neighbors appear. One was the husband and wife, and then another was the neighbor directly to the north, that all three spoke in opposition to the solar farm. We did not have anybody appear to speak in favor other than the applicant themselves. The same neighbors did file protest petitions after the planning commission within the proper time frame. The petitions did not meet the threshold to require any change with your voting status. We did have a person also contact us after the public hearing for additional details and requested documentation. Staff concerns. The biggest concern for myself going in is that we don't have any solar-specific regulations. It does fall within our scope of planning and our ability to zone. It falls in as a public utility, and we do zone and regulate public utilities. And so as a course of going through this process, doing it as a conditional use permit, I didn't see any issues moving forward, even without zoning regulations, because of the fact that we have the ability to add conditions to the farm itself. And not having had a whole lot of experience within the county doing solar farms historically, I tried to put as many conditions on as possible. The typical need for the zoning conditions coming from other staff and departments, concerns of making sure that the right-of-way for both Auburn Road and Southwest 41st Street were appropriate. Also, there was a right-of-way dedication requirement for a 2011 CUP that is associated with this in the sense that it was with that electrical substation. We put it in here merely for the fact that that dedication still needs to occur regardless of whether this conditional use permit passes, but it does need to be a condition of this conditional use permit as well to ensure that that right-of-way dedication for the other substation occurs. The entrance location is actually straddling two properties. The main entrance is into the property to the south, but it is going to straddle the property line just a little bit, and so that was also a concern. Major concerns are implementing some sort of soil erosion plan to prevent long-term soil erosion. One of the things that you hear about are when it rains, the rain flowing off of the solar panels and creating channels into the ground underneath. And the planting of native grasses will help that a little bit. But over time, if those grasses don't keep the ground underneath pretty significantly covered, the concern would be whether or not there's soil erosion. So I recommended that they put a plan into place, not necessarily telling us right now what it is that they are doing, but a plan into place if soil erosion happens in the future. Come back in a year, tell us how things are going, what they see, how they would change it, and then long-term control of that. So a plan, and I want that to be submitted to the planning department as an approval of the conditional use permit before we issue any building permits, et cetera. Also implementing a glare prevention plan. This one has become a big issue on this particular application because you're along Southwest Auburn Road, which everybody knows is a very busy highway. We want to ensure that people driving from the south to the north aren't impacted by glare. So I asked them to do a glare prevention plan, which has already been prepared and presented, and I believe it was a part of your packet. They also did a glare analysis to determine what kind of glare there would be, and their determination is that there would be none. However, I don't want to just go off of that. I wanted to have a plan in place in case someone had an issue, where they can call, who they can make contact with to make sure that this moves forward without having issues on glare. The last thing, and I have this highlighted in red because this was not a part of my original recommendation to the Planning Commission, but I added it as a condition later prior to presenting it at the public hearing, and that is for a traffic control plan. And in my discussions with the applicant, the big concern is because of the busyness of Auburn Road, we want to ensure that there is proper signage, that people are aware of the trucks coming on and off. On a standard, the solar panels are not going to take regular maintenance. Maybe occasionally someone will be coming out to the solar farm. The biggest traffic is going to be during the time of construction. Providing a buffer to the residents to the north. And as well, they're with the fence enclosing the entire property on the southern portion of their property. If 41st becomes developed, then they're going to have to move that fence line backwards and further into their own property instead of the right-of-way. I found that the proposal would comply with the golden factors with some added conditions. The site is ideal due to the location to the electrical substations and regional power lines. The biggest impact is to the neighbor to the north. And I had indicated originally that they had worked with the applicant on that buffer fencing, which I later found out was true, but that they may not have liked what was being presented. Applicant's willing to develop plans for the glare, traffic, and erosion. The use is appropriate based on surrounding zoning and land use. It's consistent with the zoning regulations that we have in place, and it's consistent with the growth of the Shawnee County Comprehensive Plan. You'll see in your packet the recommended conditions, and there's a lot of them. The biggest ones that I wanted to point out were the amendments that the commission made at the Planning Commission meeting, which was an addition of an 8 to 10 foot retaining wall along Auburn Road. My original recommendation was to have screening, like the privacy slats in the fence, or some sort of evergreen hedges. There's some other minor conditions in regards to the control, right-of-way, access break, et cetera. Those are all within the scope of the normal conditions. The fence being removed or moved at the time of request by Public Works Director. The second major one is an 8 to 10 foot retaining wall along the north property line. Again, in that sense, I thought the chain link fence and or having growth of vegetation there would be proper. They felt like it wasn't enough, and so they asked for that barrier wall. Okay, so after the planning meeting, we got contacted by the applicant who indicated that they were highly concerned about the barrier wall. An 8 to 10 foot barrier wall is going to cost a lot of money, and it will be right along Auburn Road and the north property line. They felt like there were options for changing the site plan that might make this a better scenario that wouldn't include the barrier wall. They did create a glare report and send that on, and a mitigation plan. They indicated that they were working with the neighbor to try and come up with a better plan, and they, as I said, opposed the barrier wall. The wall for them is cost prohibitive, and they sent us a new site plan that included some changes, which moved solar panels away from southwest Auburn Road a little bit, as well as moving the ones from the north down. And then they included on their site plan vegetation and the fence screening. The Planning Commission has not seen the new site plan. They have not heard those proposals. And so my current recommendation would be either you can approve it with some changes today, if you so wish. You can approve it obviously as it was presented. But my recommendation would be that this is a situation where it wouldn't hurt to send it back to the Planning Commission for some additional considerations, seeing as there was a difference of what the applicant was asking to do. And the new site plan is here. And if you would look at the difference between the two, originally there was a little notch cut out up here on the northwest corner. That has now been shifted and moved, and the solar panels themselves have moved south a little bit. It adds some additional barrier between them and the property to the north, which again, if I can get the mouse to move, is right up in here. All these little circles here would be vegetative growth that would be along the fence line. So not only would there continue to be a fence with privacy slats, but also vegetative growth. One of my biggest concerns with the barrier wall, when presented by the Planning Commission, is that along Southwest Auburn Road, we don't want to have sight lines prohibited. We don't want to cause any issues with people being able to see moving forward or coming in and out of the driveway for the neighbor to the north there. And so we want to make sure that if you do the barrier wall, that proper setbacks are included. Down below you can see is what the fence height and barbed wire looks like. That remains the same. And the length here is, I believe, approximately 350 to 400 feet. And so with the house residents being way up at the front, even having the 400 feet would be quite a bit of site protection. And that is all I have at this time, unless the commissioners have questions about this particular presentation before opening the public hearing.
Questions for Joni?
I have some questions. When you talk about a proper setback from someone's house, how many feet does the new plan have for the resident?
I'm going to actually leave that to the applicant to answer because I'm not sure how far they had it back on this plan, and the site plan is pretty small and hard to read, so I think that it would be better for them to answer that. Originally, it was pretty well up to the property line, and the distance between the house and the solar panels themselves was only about 70 feet. This would expand that a little bit further, and I'm hoping that the applicant can give you a little more detail about the exact number.
Further questions?
Mr. Chairman. Joni, included within the packet is a topography and showing the site, and it's prepared by the PPB and Evergy. It's just a little bit difficult. It looks like this sits within a valley. I'm just, if we could have some clarification as to where the topography is for this site, whether or not it's going to be flowing to the neighbor, if there's water runoff, or if it's going to be running towards that pond that's located in the corner, or what the plan is for the water runoff.
I don't know if I have that picture on my plan that you're speaking of. I'm looking here. So this one at least shows with the site plan and the picture here. The pond that you are talking about is up here in this corner.
Right.
My understanding is that all the water flows away from these neighbors to the north. Again, I'm going to defer to the applicant for the specifics of that. But I do believe that from my recollection from the presentation, it flows over to the pond and or away from the neighbors to the north.
I just touch on that as you raised it as an issue for water runoff.
Yes, because so in this situation, the water of the panels will be facing south, and the water will run down towards the south and off the corner of the solar panel. So any water would run down to the south.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Joni, when we talk about the water runoff, is the conservation district involved with that type of thing? I know you talked about erosion and native grasses and stuff. Are they consulted in any of these?
I don't believe, when we send out the packets, we send them out to area departments, whether it be local electrical or other utility departments. We send it to the townships, to other local departments, and I'm not sure whether or not that conservation district would have been one of the people that the packet was sent to. I can find out so that you know the answer to that for the future. I'm not sure of the answer to that.
It might be good, just moving forward, if we can make sure that they're consulted if we have a solar farm coming to us. That's something, it seems like it'd be important to have them look at.
Yeah, I don't know if native grasses are the answer even. I've I've had some experience with native grasses that, you know, they're hard to establish.
Yeah, they are very hard to establish. I will say that my understanding is that this property already has a lot of native grasses. It's not agriculturally used right now, so it's undeveloped. And I believe really with the disturbance of the ground, it's a matter of them drilling down. It's not putting big cement pads or anything in. And so their stance is that they will minimally impact the soil to begin with, and then they will just come in and fill back in whatever native grasses there are. We did have concern about with as many solar panels as there are, and obviously that's going to create some level of shade to the ground below, and whether or not native grasses are going to even grow underneath those solar panels, and maybe the applicant can speak to that with their history and experience in other locations. But that's why we wanted to have a soil erosion plan put into place so that there's someone doing regular checks, making reports back to the planning commission or the planning department, so that we have the ability to come back and look and make further conditions if it is not going well.
Where is their access to the property? Are they coming off Auburn Road? Or?
They're coming off of Auburn Road. So if you can see, this is where I was talking about the entrance straddles two properties. So this is the entrance right here. And technically this is the entrance for that Caw Valley electrical substation. I'm not sure why it straddled the property line to begin with. It should have been all the way on their own property, but again, I didn't look back at the permitting when that went into place, whether there was something that allowed that entrance to be there or whether there was historically an entrance there that they just utilized. But they are going to continue to have that entrance there, and part of it will be on this property to the north, and then part of it is on the property to the south. So no new entrance will be installed on this one.
Okay. You mentioned glare prevention, and that their report said there was no glare.
Correct.
How can that be? I mean, there's got to be some glare. It's good.
I don't know the answer to that. I would also think that there would be some glare. I don't know if it has to do with if you were up in the sky like an airplane, if there would be a different level of glare, if that analysis is done from the roadway as what someone driving or walking would see from a certain distance. And I'm hopeful that they can answer your questions. But I do know that there is some sort of protective coating on the solar panels that helps prevent the glare. And I think, again, because of the height of where those are located and the angle of them, that the glare is not supposed to be an issue. And that analysis is in your packet that was turned in for the agenda for today.
Have you had a chance to review other zoning ordinance from other counties concerning solar farms?
I haven't reviewed their particular zoning regulations. We did look into some of the conditions that were put onto other zoning solar farms, not necessarily those here within Kansas, but even nationwide. The biggest concern with that is that everybody is different and all locations are different. And I will say that this solar farm was probably one that was considered a little bit differently than the one to the north, just because of the location of it off of Auburn Road.
My biggest concern is the person that lives next door to this. Is that an adequate setback? Or we've talked about some kind of buffer fence that's, what, 8 feet tall?
The one that the Planning Commission proposed was an actual wall. So if you go past some other electrical substations, I believe the one off of Southeast California might have a wall around it. This one does not. And so one of the things that I found interesting was that we would have these 2 electrical substations that have no specific barrier wall, but then the Planning Commission wished to put a barrier wall around the solar panels. And the height of the solar panels is 12 feet, and the electrical center in the middle is 15 feet, and the barrier wall that they indicated would be 8 to 10. So I don't know how much more that will block the sight of the underside of the solar panels or the solar panels themselves above and beyond what vegetation and or a chain link fence with privacy slats could do. And the fence, the chain link fence could actually be taller as well. Our regulations allow the fence to be up to 8 feet with additional barbed wire on top of that. anyways. So 6 feet could be increased as well.
So this wall is just a chain link fence?
Well, the original plan is chain link fence.
Okay.
And then
asked for a
the
wall.
amended site plan, that's what the applicant wishes to maintain. The barrier wall itself would be like cement bricks,
Concrete,
like
prefab.
concrete, thick, a foot or 2 feet deep, and then 8 to 10 feet tall. It would be a wall.
Okay.
So to clarify, the way that I originally recommended was the chain link fence with privacy slats and/or vegetation. And then the planning commission came in and changed the condition to the barrier wall. And then now the applicant has made some changes to its site plan that it wished for you to consider today, that included vegetation and moving the solar panels back a little bit, which was why my suggestion was that maybe it needs to go back to the planning commission for some additional consideration. If the commission determines that that's the route you would like to go, I would recommend making some specific findings for them to consider of what you would like to see.
Okay. Any other questions for Joni? All right, then I'll make a motion, we go into a public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes 3-0. We're in a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Good morning. My name's Chris Carey. I'm with PPB Enviro Solutions here on behalf of Evergy and Free State. We've been working with the Planning Commission, the adjoining property owners, and the two companies since this project was initiated. Like Joni mentioned, she gave a really good presentation of what our project is. We went into the Planning Commission meeting. We heard a number of important comments from the adjoining property owners, some other neighbors, and the Planning Commission itself. And we took those ideas and those concepts and modified those into the site plan that you guys have before you today. Like Joni mentioned, we shifted the panels away from the adjoining house. We shifted them back away from Auburn Road as well. In addition, we're looking at installing the vegetative screening along with our chain link fence to provide some visual barrier, which I think is really the issue that the Planning Commission was trying to get at, was making sure that there was some kind of visual barrier, some kind of physical separation between the adjoining property owner to the north and the solar panels themselves. So we really tried to look at and understand what the issues were that the Planning Commission was concerned with, understand what the adjoining property owner was concerned with, and come up with a game plan to address those specific issues. And I think we've done that fairly successfully in the site plan that you guys have. We received some feedback from the adjoining property owner last Friday about 1 o'clock, and we've addressed 7 of 8 of his concerns that he identified. The only issue that Free State and Evergy aren't prepared to address is monetary compensation. So with that, we think this is a great project. We looked at properties around the substations, which is really where they need to be, and we ultimately decided that both for this project and the project you'll hear about next, these are the most suitable properties for the solar farms that we have. Speaking specifically to some of the issues that you guys raised, as well as Joni, site topography, runoff is going to run from the solar farm to the east and drain into that existing pond feature that's there. Evergy and Free State are going to implement erosion and sediment control best management practices to make sure that we don't have any issues with stormwater runoff coming off of that property. With that, do you guys have any questions for us?
I'm sure we do.
Glare prevention.
Yeah.
Your report said you won't have any glare, is that?
So I'm going to let my colleague Damon speak to that in more detail, but what our study did, we hired an outside contractor to evaluate the potential for glare to affect motorists along Auburn Road. And so because these panels are set up higher, and because of the orientation of the panels, the outside expert that we hired concluded that there wouldn't be glare that would affect motorists, mostly because these panels are situated 6 feet above the ground. So it's just not going to be something that is going to be an issue. Like Joni mentioned, we did develop a glare mitigation strategy. In the event that the analysis was wrong, in the event that motorists do experience glare, we have a very detailed process for how we go from getting that reported, who that report goes to, and then what the game plan and timeline is for getting those sorts of issues addressed.
You've been involved in developing other solar farms?
Honestly, these are the first two that I've worked on.
Okay.
But we have an extensive engineering team that's supporting us as well.
This barrier wall, how would you envision that being constructed? What type of material would you be using?
So, Evergy and Free State are of the opinion that we don't need to construct a concrete wall. Our preference from a cost standpoint, from a visual standpoint, is that, planting some trees along the outside of that fence line is going to be more attractive than building a precast concrete wall. Especially when, like Joni mentioned, the two properties next door are existing electrical substations that just have chain link fence. So we think this is going to be a big improvement from, what's next door. And then by working with the property owner on that, we think that's really going to be a more attractive option. Of those 8 criteria that the adjoining property owner asked for, one of those was putting trees up. Let's plant some trees. And so we think that's for us, more cost-effective option, but also just more attractive option for anyone who happens to be driving up and down Auburn Road for the neighboring property. So that's why we think that's the best approach over a wall.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
I don't have any,
Any other questions?
no.
I guess the one thing that I would like to add,
Please.
with all due respect to Joni, we are on a pretty tight timeline for this project, and we would ask that you guys approve with whatever conditions that you feel is appropriate here, as opposed to remanding this back to the Planning Commission.
Okay. I do have one other question also. So in looking at the site plan, I know I'm not trying to recommend any changes to the site plan, but I'm curious, just sort of in the thinking of, there's a lot of land on the other side of the Evergy substation. Why was it moved to the north and not to the east?
So when you're dealing with solar, one of the critical elements is how close you are to the point where you can tie it into the substation. So in this case, we're not tying into the big Evergy substation, we're tying into this very small substation that's here. And so we
Okay.
really needed to be as close as possible to that property.
Okay, that makes sense.
But moving that bank of solar panels to the right to get away from the house more and to get away from Auburn Road a little bit more, that would be undoable, or?
And that's what we did. This is, I think Joni left this one up because it shows the aerial background. Can I just slide over this one?
Go all the way, I had it all the way at the end.
Okay. So here you can see we slid the panels down. We're now about 30 feet, and I think 27 feet off of our property line now with these panels here.
I mean, it looks like you have a lot of space right in here.
We do, and that's a transmission line easement, so we can't go into that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Yep.
Damon Reddy, project manager with Evergy. I'd like to address your question about the glare analysis that we performed. So the glare analysis was performed about 3/4 of a mile to the south of the array and about half a mile to the north of the array along Auburn Road. And it was at heights of about 4 feet for a normal commuter vehicle and 8 feet for a semi-truck, essentially. And so what the analysis concluded was that at those heights and along that path, that the glare from the panels and the array would not cause an issue for the motorists. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have about the project.
Any other questions?
How's the impact on wildlife with solar panels?
Well, obviously, the fence will keep out the larger wildlife, deer and things like that. But as far as, smaller wildlife, they are able to live within the habitat as normal, squirrels and
Say a
birds.
bird flies over this area, are they toast?
No. So studies have shown, with the FAA and pilots that the glare from solar panels to the air is very similar to the glare off of a water body.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So environmental impacts, with all the solar panels there, is that going to raise the average heat of that area, collecting all the solar power?
The solar modules do run hotter than the ambient environment.
So is that heat then going to radiate over to the property to the north?
As unknown, I can't speak to that. I haven't seen studies that show the heat drifting from the modules to the nearby property owners.
As you're collecting all of that heat, and collecting all of that energy, it's going to go somewhere. And if it's going to radiate out in a boundary, it's going to impact the property owners adjacent. Logically, that would
Yeah.
seem to happen.
Makes sense. Yeah, the purpose of the solar panels is to absorb that energy, which is why they end up being warmer. And so they do carry, that heat into the evening and into the night. They will be 10, 15 degrees or more warmer
So-
than the ambient conditions.
On a day where it's 110, your neighbors may be at 115. Again, hypothetically.
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
How much electricity are you gonna generate from a farm this size?
So from a farm this size, it generates a little over 2 megawatts DC, and then we convert that down to about 1.6 megawatts AC. So that's enough for about 550 homes year-round, all of the energy that they need to use.
Okay. And there's no battery storage?
No battery storage.
It's,
No.
they're just actually generating electricity whenever the sun's out,
Correct.
basically?
Yep. And all of that electricity will be sent to that smaller Free State substation and utilized by those Free State customers in the local area that substation serves.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Chris Parr. I'm the CEO at Free State Electric Cooperative. I just kind of wanted to give a little background of why we think this is a really important project for our member consumers. Between these two sites, between Crooked Post and, this is actually our largest substation. We serve about just a little under 3,000 members off of this sub. On that 1.6 megawatts, including with the Cairo, which is about a megawatt, we're going to save our members annually $375,000. This power that we're purchasing, because we are entering into a purchase power agreement with Evergy, will save our members about $10 to $12 a year. And it is our hopes, it is a purchase power agreement now, but it is our hopes to purchase and buy this farm in about 7 years from now. So this power is generated and purchased and goes directly to my member consumer. This is not large utility scale solar, so it is directly impacting all of our Free State members. So I just wanted to point that important point out, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Alex Darby, Professional Engineering Consultants. I've helped with the site plan as well as some of the other planning associated with this project. And to answer Commissioner Rippon's question about the native grasses. So Evergy has developed a blend with that and some forbs and other things, and with your background, I'm sure you're well aware of that, that they're actually using successfully in Baldwin City, in Douglas County, where they've got a good blend there for the local pollinators, of course, but that will actually grow both underneath the panels, which, again, it's not shaded 100% with the rotation of the panels, that is resilient to be able to keep a good grass stand throughout the entire site. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Okay. We have two people signed up against. One is Jan Davis.
Good morning. My name is Jan Davis. I work in Shawnee County, but I actually reside in Osage County. I'm also an Osage County Planning Commissioner. But I'm here today to speak for Christine, who lives next door with Ryan. They've been there probably 20 years. So there's 3 generations of my family next to this. And I think some of my research might answer some of your questions. 6 months ago in January, Osage County put a moratorium out for no new solar and wind because there's so much that we don't know, and how can we recommend approval when there's no regulations, when we don't know what the downside of it is? So that's what I want to cover with you today. And first off, the retaining pond. This was one of Chrissy, who lives there, my daughter-in-law. The pond at the back, when they first met with Evergy rep May 26th, he said, well, first thing we're going to do is come in and we'll just round up and kill all the grass so that we can come in and pound in 5,700 panels. She was concerned about drift onto their property. She was concerned about the drift, the rain runoff to the pond, which drains to the north. It runs across the back of their property, but it also drains to Lake Sherwood, which is not that far away. Just last week, I was at their home, and Evergy was spraying what's the big blank square. There was a blue mist about a foot off the ground, and they were spraying their gravel for weeds. And as she has before, she got on the phone and asked them what they were spraying, and they wouldn't tell her. She has had some kill in years past from overspray for vegetation. Our main concern is the first 200 feet from Auburn Road back is their primary living area. They, a year or two ago, put in a nice all-weather room. It gets great breeze from the north and the south and the east. Our concern was that it would block the prevailing south wind that comes across that brome pasture right now. And recently discovered in my research is an effect called a solar heat island, where the heat generated from solar panels generally is about 120, normally they run about 120 degrees. You add a south wind to 12 foot of that 120 degrees, and you get a blow furnace coming to their season room, which is 70 feet away. In response to Ryan's concerns of the setback, they moved it back 10 foot. But they're using a 6 foot, what I call no, I shouldn't call it that. These chain link fences with the plastic slats are ugly, with barbed wire on the top. And that's for their minimum protection. But if your neighbor came in and put in a 6-foot barbed wire fence, you know, it's just, number one, it kills the aesthetics. They've had a brown field to look at, but also with the solar heat island, they are going to get hot. I have always maintained and felt that that first 200 feet, that I would like to see a setback of the solar panels set back 200 feet. The next 200 feet on their property, Chrissy has a greenhouse. She has fruit trees. She has a garden. She's concerned about overspray from the field. She's concerned about the heat, you know, and it doesn't, the heat, they'll say, well, the heat doesn't emanate out, but the breeze blows across that surface. It's like blowing a furnace. So if we could move that panel back 200 feet, that would put it beginning behind their garage. It would leave them open. They would not have the oven effect, and it would be back on the back part of the property. We know that this is going to go through. Ryan's been told it doesn't matter because this is going to go through. We don't have an electrical shortage. We have a transmission wire shortage. So it's perfect sense that this would go in where the transmission lines are. Because when utility companies go before the KCC and ask for a rate increase, it's for new transmission lines. It's not for new electrical plants. I've got with me a copy printed off of the Southwest Power Pool website. It's 14 pages front and back, from last updated over 6 months ago, of existing solar and wind in the Southwest Power Pool region. The watt output is effective to having 32 Jeffrey Energy Centers. So it's not that we don't have electricity, it's that we have a transmission problem. Same thing in California, don't plug in your car, the grid can't handle it. So, and there is, they can show me studies that there's no, that it's a misconception that property values go down. I can show you 2 real studies and not just an opinion that's put out by the Solar Energy Industries Association, that it does destroy local habitat. Chrissy has over a half dozen bird feeders on their property, lots of flowers. She's got her own greenhouse. The birds will not, anywhere you look on research, it kills birds, destroys habitat. Ryan walked down to the pond to the back end of the property, and there were deer footprints, and the representative's response was, well, there's other water around that they'll find. We're concerned about runoff of Roundup, and so, and there is, on the 2 studies that I looked up online, they didn't get as close to this as the studies did. The closest they came was 700 feet. These guys are 15 feet off their property line, 40 foot from their house, from their all-season room. In the beginning, Ryan asked if they would be interested in taking the back half of Ryan's property and trading it for the front 200 feet. so that they could have that setback and not have that in their face. But you see that diagonal line that runs through there, that transmission line runs a wide diagonal swath. It cuts Ryan's property down, and the electric company didn't want his property because they can't do anything with it because of the transmission lines. So we've tried to get that back. So I have a lot more information. I could go on, and I do have one question I need. The first plan showed a lithium battery along the side. Has that moved? Is there not a lithium battery? Never was? Okay. I just think there's so many questions that need to be answered, but I think Kansas statute provides that you have the authority to set the siting procedures, and even though you don't have the regulations in place. So my response is that a starting point is to move that front setback away from Auburn Road and away from their home by 200 feet. Saves them 200 feet of fencing too, because you wouldn't need the heavier fencing, a plain chain link without the slats in it. So, I have a lot of other, I just don't think that it needs to, I think there's still a lot of consideration. I know they're ready to start. They have a crew that's ready to go in there next week and get started. But I think there's a lot of questions that are unanswered for the family that lives next door and the other neighbors. I think there need to look at the runoff into the pond, and that pond has a tributary that runs into Lake Sherwood. So there's just, I have a lot of questions that, especially about the solar heat island, and that studies are showing that it can actually change entire neighborhoods' temperatures because it raises the temperature. So there's still another study yet to be done, and that has to do with the FAA. It's beyond the glare report, because that is a roundabout flight path for Forbes too. So anyway, one other response that they asked about was that there would be 5,700 hydraulic motors moving in unison all day, and the noise abatement from that, and they're just told, oh, it's quiet. 5,700 hydraulic motors, maybe they are quiet. So the other thing that's not in place is a decommissioning. I know they own the property, but when the panels are exhausted or when there's new technology, they have lithium, they have selenium. They've got 3 chemicals that are toxic waste. So I think there needs to be some kind of a plan when the panels are out of date. If they break and begin to leach lead, there's lead in them, selenium and cadmium. So I just have too many questions, I think, for this to move forward.
Any questions for Ms. Davis?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Next up, I've got Thomas Kelly.
Good morning. My name is Tom Kelly. My wife Catherine is with me. We happen to be approximately 600 feet north of the boundary. They're in my neighbor's back pocket. I've got 600 feet. I have several concerns. One is the property value. We moved out there in 1975 when our first son was born. That's 40, going on 47 years. We've had 4 children raised in that area. We also, both my wife and I are radio amateur operators. To get a license, we have to take tests from the federal FCC office and pass them. We talk around the world. I've talked to people all over the world, running down the Amazon River. But a lot of people don't understand or don't realize that anytime you have a national emergency, 9/11, when the Twin Towers went down, you know who established the first communications in that area? Amateur radio operators. Anytime you have a tornado, anytime you have a natural disaster and the communication goes down, it's we're called hams. It's hams that establish communication, okay? So because of that, there are regulations that prevent interference of our operation by electrical companies, by other companies. If there's a problem, they're required by law to fix that problem. And the gentleman said he contacted us. Well, I've got to correct him. We've dealt with these folks before when they wanted to put a large transfer station 900 feet off my front porch. Then they moved it down to where it is existing now. Didn't talk to us then. First time I'd found about it was the Planning Commission sent me paperwork in May. They want to get this started this month. Because of, have you ever heard of EMF, electrical magnetic fields? Okay? Everything that's electrical puts out an EMF. This computer, you know, puts it out. I was volunteer fireman, and I could take a 3-foot fluorescent tube and walk under the transmission lines that are transferring power, and I could light that bulb up in my hand. And that's electrical magnetic field that affects health, affects sleeping, all other things. It also creates a lot of noise. And since then, my noise level on my radios are going up. And by putting more of these fields in, so close to us, they're now going to affect me and my wife more on a communication property. I'm in I had a major heart attack a little over 2 years ago, and I decided I was going to put my tower up so I could communicate better. I don't know if that's going to happen. You're talking about wildlife. I don't know if you're aware, but there was a state record deer taken by my neighbor near that pond a few years ago. Okay? Did they tell you about the 10-inch pipeline that runs, gas pipeline that runs along Auburn Road? One of the commissioners said, well, let's put a berm there. You can't put a berm on top of a gas pipeline. But on solar panels, the studies I've heard, the solar panels only produce about a little over 3% of the electricity in the United States. Wind generators only provide 9% or a little bit more than 9% of total electricity throughout the United States. And so, like I said, it's them spraying. My neighbor was concerned with the spraying. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm very well of what vegetation spray does. It concerns me greatly. It's just things like this. They keep saying your electric is going to go down. I remember years ago that the electric company, not Caw Valley, but put out a full-page ad, said, need to use more electricity, it's so cheap. Full-page ads in the Pico Journal. A couple of years later, get a full-page ad. Electricity is going up because people are using so much of it. So our bill going down $12, I've never seen our electric bill go down. They have power cost transfers. When the gas went down, they didn't take that off, it was still there. So as far as our electrical bill going down, I doubt it very seriously. Like I said, lack of communication. But my biggest concern is the electrical field is going to affect us. Health-wise, it's going to affect our property values, and it's definitely going to affect my operations and my wife's operations of amateur radio. Do you gentlemen have any questions?
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank
Thank
for
you.
being here. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please. Just state your name and
My name's Ryan Bayless, and I live right next door to it. I just have a lot of concerns. Probably, I don't know, the whole time that I've been, I guess, negotiating, it was when I talked to Matt on the 20th of May, when he come to my house, and we talked about everything, and his whole deal was, you know, we'd really like to get your approval on this, and I'd really like to get a letter from you to say you're for the project. And he said something about moving it over 20 more feet from the 7 feet that was already there. And but it sounded like the whole time I had to say I was for the project and give him a letter. I mean, that was the whole thing. Every time he called me, I had to give him a letter to approve the project. The only decent conversation was when I talked to him. He was the easiest to talk to because it was so, you know, I had to find a lawyer to kind of work me through, figure out what it was, and, you know, I'm not going to bring him back into it, but, I mean, I think there should be kind of some more research to it. I mean, I have concerns. I'd like to sit down and talk to him, but we wasn't getting anywhere with Matt. It was causing more stress than anything. I mean, yeah, they did say you can have this, try this and this, but there's always that letter I had to put in. I mean, can I not be for the project, but work for maybe some solutions? Is all I asked, you know, was asking. So that's all I have to say.
okay. Thank you for being here. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing. Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes 3-0. We're out of a public hearing. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we have just outlining for the public and also for the commissioners some of the golden factors that we would consider in this proposal? The county councilor has those. We've touched on it with other planning items.
Just 1 second, sir.
No worries.
If you have them.
Per the request, Commissioner Cook. Golden factors, there are 8 that you may consider. Coming from Golden versus City of Overland Park back in 1978, these factors are used for planning and zoning considerations to determine whether or not a decision is reasonable. They are not exclusive, but they are items that a zoning body should consider. The first is the character of the neighborhood, zoning uses of nearby properties, suitability of the property for the uses to which it's restricted, meaning how it's currently zoned, the extent to which the change will detrimentally affect nearby property, the length of time the property has been vacant as it is currently zoned, the gain to the public health, safety, and welfare by the possible diminution in value of the developer's property as compared to the hardship imposed on individual landowners, the recommendations of a permanent or professional planning staff, and the conformance of the requested change to the county's comprehensive plan. I would also note that in looking through the original staff report from the planning department, the staff report goes through each of those conditions and lays out what the staff's opinion is on how that affects it. So if you look at the staff report, it goes through each of those golden factors.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since we have no current regulations on solar farms, and this is the first conditional use permit that has come before the commission on this type of an item, I think that if the board is to consider passing or approving this, there should be a condition on it that it would be subject to any future regulation that the planning department may bring forth in the future. Otherwise, it would be grandfathered in and not subject to any future regulation. So that would be, if we are to consider it, I would hope that we can have a provision in there that says that it would be subject to any future code regulation. And I discussed that with the county councilor, and he said that that would be appropriate.
I would like to add to that. I would like to add that there'd be a 1-year review, or after 1 year, that we come back and see if we have any further questions, just to review the project.
Now, those things being said, I have some serious concerns about this project and the location of this project. When you look at the closeness to the property, to the Bayless and house property, we're talking very, very, even with the revised site plan, this is very, very close to their property. And when we look at the impact to their property, the Evergy representative did indicate that there would be an additional heat gathered from there, although he was unsure as to the amount of the heat. And that heat, where it's going to radiate to, is going to impact them. Having that property so close causes me great concern. Less so for the part that is farther to the, away from the property. The farther away from the residential property, the concerns change. But when we look at the golden factors and how it would affect that property that's already there and how it would affect the residents, causes me grave concerns.
I had a question. Who owns the transmission line? Yeah. Evergy owns the transmission line? I don't see the easement drawn on this. You have like a right-of-way easement or through there? And how wide is that?
Yeah, please come up.
I don't see
Could you
the
just
scale
repeat
on
that?
here.
Repeat that last statement.
Yeah, so the transmission line run through the property is owned by Evergy, and it's a 100-foot center line easement, so 50 foot either side of the center line of the transmission line. And so we are right at the 50-foot mark where the corners of those arrays are.
And would you be buying this energy, or would this ultimately be your farm, or?
Evergy is constructing the farm and selling the energy to Free State Cooperative.
So you could move in on your easement, your right-of-way? with this?
It would require we would need to work with our transmission team to determine if the height of the panels would have an impact on that transmission line to move into the easement.
I don't really see where the transmission line would have much effect on your panels. We're not talking about a lot of shade from a line. I know you have to get in there possibly to work on a tower or something, but on this drawing, I don't see the easement drawn on. I don't see the towers on there. It might be on there.
Yeah.
I think the towers are.
Towers are here.
That's one there.
Here, well, maybe those are just labels. We have discussed this an encroachment agreement with our transmission folks, and they are hesitant to go that route if there are alternatives.
Really?
Yes.
However, anything that impacts the transmission line is something that would have to be reviewed by your transmission team.
Yes.
So I don't know if you're the right person to ask about this, but there were statements made about, killing off all the grass, and then there were other statements made about wanting to grow more. And so I guess I'm
Sure.
a little conflicted there.
Yeah, so we do not plan to mass kill the vegetation on the property with pesticides or any sort of chemical. We will spray for noxious weeds, just like we do at substations and, other properties. But no, we do intend to minimally disturb the property. What we do disturb will be backfilled with, like a native grass mix and pollinator mix. And then also to address the hydraulic motors and the noise, there are 4 small 3-horsepower motors, 1 for each array. And then the only noise for the property will be where the inverter stations are, right there in the middle. And those are no louder than a residential air conditioner, fan.
Those motors, I assume they're electric motors
electric
too, so they're
motors,
not
yes.
running off a diesel generator or anything like that.
Nope, they are electric. Yeah, so they'll modulate it once every 10 minutes or so to track.
So what kind of ground cover do we have on there right now? Is it pasture grass or?
Yeah, it's hayed.
Hay?
Yeah.
I think the alternative second plan here is a step in the right direction for sure. I mean, the additional setbacks, I think trees are gonna be probably more effective and better looking than the chain link fence with the privacy screening on it, I think. That would be not very appealing aesthetically, but the other thing, on Auburn Road, I find it interesting, we're doing landscaping on Auburn Road in front of the solar farm, but nothing was ever done in front of the substations, at least not that I can tell. So, I mean, is it just because of the glare that we're wanting to do that?
So the vegetation screening along Auburn Road was in response to the wall request from the Planning Commission. And so instead of the wall, we recommended vegetative screening along Auburn Road, since that was one of the conditions.
Okay.
But you've built walls in a lot of your substations here in Topeka, right?
I am not familiar
I've
with
seen some of them.
substations, what our group does there, but I have seen walls around them, yes. Yeah. And this will not look like a substation property with gravel and heavy electrical equipment. It will be H piles driven into the ground with solar panels mounted on top and native grass cover underneath.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
on the revised site plan that we're looking at right now, there's a line that runs from left to right, just down from the property line. Do you see that?
You're-
From this, go up,
Right there.
This?
up, higher,
What is that other line?
higher.
This is 1258.
There, right there,
This
that
line?
line.
Yes.
So, if you were to take the solar panels that are between that line
Mhm.
and the property line
Yes.
and move those solar panels to the lower portion where you have nothing, that L
You're,
Go
you're
down.
speaking here?
right there, go over,
Yep.
that L there, right there.
Yes. There's another transmission easement right here.
Okay, so that's the reason why.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And that transmission's also
It's also Evergy's.
Evergy's.
And we are at the 50-foot mark on that easement as well.
All right.
Even on the south side of the substation? 'Cause it appears that there's maybe an acre or two of land just to the south of that small substation.
Are you speaking this property?
Yeah.
here? That also has transmission running through it. And I believe would be in the 41st Street right away.
Oh. I think there's, I know that time is of the essence on this for you guys, but I feel like there's still a lot of questions. And, you know, the recommendation of the planning director was to send it back to the planning commission for additional review. I feel like there's still some modifications that need to be made, and the site plan that we're looking at here with the trees and everything was never looked at by the planning commission. Was it? Yeah. Which, you know, I don't think I'd have a problem with it if the property owners next door were a little more amenable to it or had had some time to review it. And so, Joni, could you tell me, when does the planning commission meet next?
Tonight.
Tonight?
We
Is it-
meet tonight, and then the next meeting after that would be in July. Let me get the exact date up.
So, well, let me ask you
July
this.
11th would be the next one.
So if
after
we
this.
were to send it back to the planning commission, could they talk about it tonight, since it's not on the agenda already?
The biggest issue would be notice, and if the people here are willing and able to speak of it, we could, but they wouldn't have had an opportunity to review anything. And if any of the items that have come up, like them going back to the transmission team and seeing if there's the possibility of moving those solar panels into the transmission easement, or even potentially back into this property over here, if there's a method of taking on some of this property back here to push it away from the front. I just think that could they consider the site plan that was presented here today? Yes, they could. But could they consider other things that you have discussed as the board probably not in detail without giving the applicant fair opportunity to be able to respond to those.
So, I know I have it pulled up here somewhere, but it's a big packet for this item. Of the notification area, how many folks were in that notification area that are not present today that we could, I mean, is
let me
it
get
just,
to it.
just the 2 property owners? Oh, here, I found it.
Here it is. So the ones that have spoke today are Bayless here.
Uh-huh.
And Miss Davis is with this family as well. And then Thomas Kelly is this property up here. So this one up here is, several of these are owned privately. This property here is, these actually all here are owned by the same people who own the property itself. So the Egan's own this property that's being consumed by the solar farm, and then they also own all of this to the east. This here is Caw Valley, and then KP&L and Westar. So from the majority, all of this is involved in the application itself.
Commissioner Mays, it looks like there would be 6 additional people needing notice that aren't present here today.
Do we have any way to notify those folks? And I mean, is it?
We send everything
call
out
or
via
email?
mail. We
Okay.
wouldn't have, other than maybe this property here is Mission Township, we would be able to get in touch with them. I'm not sure.
I did not count them as one of the 6.
Yeah, I don't know that we would have the ability to reach out to the others. In regards to, say, for instance, the one that we were supposed to hear today that got continued, I did search through white pages and such to try and find phone numbers and contact people. I didn't hear back from anybody, so it would probably be the same situation here to notify someone. To be fair, none of those people showed up at the planning commission meeting or here today, and so typically when we're looking at, and this is me stepping into kind of the legal role, when we're looking at notice, really you're looking at providing notice to people who have been interacting back and forth. They were aware of the public hearing originally, and they were aware of this meeting, and so this here would be your public notice to people that it's heard tonight. The question would be whether everything could be considered on a short-term basis.
Any further?
If you're going to make a motion to defer back to the planning commission, I would second that.
Okay. Does the planning commission, have they in the past ever done any special meetings for just a particular item?
We do have the ability to call a special meeting. We did that with the comprehensive plan quite frequently, actually. We had special meetings on the regular basis. And so I, as the planning director, could talk with the chair, and the chair has the ability to call a special meeting. And that could definitely be discussed tonight. We could put that on as an agenda item and have them discuss a special meeting to have this considered before July's meeting.
I think that would be my preference. It's just, and I don't know that we need to take any official action on that, but I think just it'd be good if maybe we could set something up so that they could meet sooner rather than later. And kind of get some of this cleared up. So I would make a motion that we refer this back to the planning commission.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Is there any additional discussion on the motion?
Commissioner,
Yeah.
James Krause, Shawnee County Councilor, you do need to give some direction to the planning commission as to what they need to consider
Okay.
when you send it back to
So
them.
would it be appropriate in my motion if I said to consider the additional site plan that was proposed today?
Sure.
And any modifications that they see fit in addition to those that were presented? Okay. So are you
I
still in
would
favor?
still say
You'd
yes.
still second that? Okay. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. And then again, please, at the meeting tonight, discuss setting a special meeting just for this item.
We will definitely do that.
All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Item B3, public hearing and consider approval of resolution number 2022-46, a conditional use permit to allow construction of solar farm on an 11.9 acre property located at 7300 Northwest 35th Street, zoned RR1 Residential Reserve in Minnochan Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shawnee, Interim Planning Director. As I mentioned, you have two solar farms. This is the second of the two. And so for the most part, a lot of the information that was provided to you on the last matter is applicable in this one. A few changes is obviously the location. This one is off of Northwest 35th Street. It's on an 11.9 acre property, also zoned as RR1, but it is currently being used for agricultural purposes. This one is located across the road from the substation, so it's a little bit further away. Northwest 35th is the dividing road there. Also joint effort between Evergy and Free State. This one was approved 5-0 by the Planning Commission, and they did not make any changes to the conditions that had been presented by staff. This one's a little bit smaller at 3,456 solar panels. Heights are the same. Electrical panel in the center the same. One of the big differences on this property is that it's a lease option. They will be leasing it for 30 years. They do, my understanding is that they do have a decommission segment within their lease, but I did not review that personally. I did make a recommendation in this one that there be a decommission plan required since the lease is only for 30 years. They do have the ability, to my understanding, also to exercise the option to extend the lease, which then would obviously delay any decommissioning. This one also enclosed by the chain link fence, planted with native grasses. A little bit more of a concern with soil erosion and getting those native grasses started on this one because it's historically been used as an agricultural plot of land versus hay or brome. Construction time frame is similar. You can see here on this one, a little bit different in terms of spacing. This property where this is located is here. This would be the lease section. The property owner, though, however, owns the whole segment of land around that. This here is the closest house. And from my recollection on my report, I would have to look back. I believe that they're closer to like 300 and 400 feet away. So this house here is one of them, and then this one down here is also about that same 300 to 400 feet. So it's a much further distance than the one you just heard. And then this here is the electrical substation itself that it would be serving. This was the notification. For this hearing, we did not have anybody contact us ahead. We had one email ahead of time, and that person asked a bunch of questions. I sent those questions on to the applicant, and they answered those questions and sent that back in writing. And those are all part of your packet in regards to the information that they were requesting. And that is, in essence, what triggered my request for a traffic control plan. This is a gravel road, and so there was concern about the current status of the road, how construction traffic along there may affect the road. And so there is some response to that traffic control within the applicant's materials. They indicated that they would monitor that and then work with the local township to try and repair roads and keep gravel dust down during the construction period. And again, nobody appeared in opposition for the matter at the Planning Commission. We did have one person show up in favor, and that was the homeowner or the landowner who is leasing that property. These are the solar panels that would go into play for this solar farm. And just for recognition here, this would be sideways because this here is Northwest 35th, which actually runs east to west. So north is this direction. Here it is with picture version. We did have several neighbors email after the public hearing to ask questions about the results. we sent information on as needed and responded to questions, informing people of this public hearing option. Nobody gave concerns, it was more just questions. We did have one neighbor thank us for the serious discussion on the matter. Which I believe is also included in your packet. They felt like it had been highly considered by the Planning Commission ahead of their decision. Zoning conditions, right away for Northwest 35th Street, and then they will also have to obtain an entrance permit from Minnochan Township because this one will have to get a new entrance. Again, we want to implement a soil erosion plan and long-term soil control, plant native grasses, implement a glare prevention plan here. Although we're not dealing with a road as heavily traveled as Auburn Road, there is still traffic that goes along Northwest 35th, and there are still neighbors, and so we want to ensure that there is a plan in place in case there are issues. Also, in red, I added this prior to the Planning Commission meeting, which is implementing a traffic control plan to allow for the heavier construction, repairs to the road, dust, signage. Also, in this situation, removal of the solar panels, fencing, and other equipment after termination of the lease. And then I did ask for some screening to help the visual impacts to the homes to the west and to the southeast in regards to some screening and vegetation as well. I felt like with this proposal that it complied with the golden factors, as long as we added in conditions. The site's ideal due to the electrical substation. Biggest impact is to those neighbors to the west and southeast. The applicant was willing to implement plans for glare, traffic, and erosion. It's appropriate based on the surrounding zoning and land uses. It's consistent with zoning regulations and with the comprehensive plan. And then the Planning Commission recommended, pursuant to the staff recommendation, all of these conditions listed here. And that was the end of my presentation, unless you have questions on this matter.
Questions for Joni on this?
No.
All right, I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Mays, seconded by Commissioner Cook. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes 3-0. We're in a public hearing now. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Good morning again, Chris Carey, PPB Enviro Solutions on behalf of Evergy and Free State. I think Joni has covered everything associated with this project. I don't really have anything to add unless you guys have specific questions for us.
I have a couple questions. So with this one, the substation's across the road.
Right.
How exactly is the electricity getting across the road?
We're going to tie into an existing line that crosses the road right at the location of the solar farm. There's already a distribution line crossing at that point.
Okay, and then also, so during construction, I think it was mentioned it's like a gravel road here.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's probably going to be a lot of trucks and stuff. What's the timeline on the construction? Just
Generally about 6 months. So we're hoping, with your approval, to get started later this month, be done by Christmas.
okay. Thank you. Commissioner Rippon?
How much energy are you planning on creating with this solar farm?
This one is a little bit smaller than the other one. I don't have the exact number for them separate, but this one is just a little bit smaller than the one we talked about a few minutes ago.
So when I look at the map, it looks like this one has a lot of room to grow in the long run. Are there plans to expand this in the future?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't believe so.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Mhm.
In addition to the traffic control plan that's indicated, is there any objection to maybe looking at putting down dust control or other things, since we're going to have vehicles coming in and out for 6 months?
That's really just part of Evergy and Free State's standard operating procedure. They don't want to create a nuisance to folks in the area when we have large scale construction projects. So that would just be something that they would do.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would move for,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Again, I think that there should be, for conditions put on this, in addition to those put forth by the Planning Commission, a 1-year review.
Good.
And then that would be subject to any future code regulations that the Shawnee County may develop.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. Those in favor say aye. And actually, just to clarify, just to close the public hearing,
Yes, close the public hearing and then add 2 conditions to those made by the Planning Commission.
okay. Are you still okay with that seconding?
Second.
All right. So those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item C, Public Works, number 1, consider approval of request to award bid to Mid-States Materials of Lecompton, Kansas for up to 3,000 tons of clean crushed limestone at a unit cost of $17.35 per ton and a total maximum expenditure of $52,050. Funding will come from the Monmouth Township Road Maintenance Fund.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Niehaus, Director of Public Works. This is just my annual request to buy this kitty litter type aggregate. It's a clean limestone, and the reason it's clean is because when they put it down, it doesn't create a lot of dust. We use a lightweight aggregate in Shawnee County on our roads. Monmouth Township prefers to use this traditional limestone. We received 2 bids, which is a great thing. But just to clarify, Hams got out of the asphalt business, as you know, late last year, but they're still in the aggregate business. So fortunately, both Bettis and Hams provided a bid. They were quite competitive. Bettis turned out to be the lowest best bid at $17.35 a ton, which represents a $0 increase from last year. So with that, I'm recommending approval, and I look forward to any questions.
Any questions for Kurt?
I'll move to approve.
Second. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Mays. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Next item, please.
Item D, Audit Finance, number 1, May 2022 Financial Report.
Good morning, Betty Griner, Director of Administrative Services. I'm here this morning for the financial report as of May 31st, 2022. We will start on the revenue side. The total revenues that the county has received through May 31st total $61,770,297. That is $91,171 over the budgeted amount, or a positive variance of that amount. So as you can see, we are right on budget for the year. That is actually a positive variance of 0.08%. So I don't think we can get any closer than that. This just shows all the different categories that I will go through. First category, property tax revenue, $53,446,775. That has not changed since last month because we did not have a tax distribution. We will have a tax distribution in June, so it will change then. Next category is other tax revenue, $4,364,574. That is $526,000 over budget, and that is mostly attributable to the highway tax coming in higher than expected. The next category is charges for services, $2,310,190. That is $125,000 under budget, and that's mostly DOC inmates coming from other jurisdictions. And our last category is other revenue, $1,648,758, and that is $149,000 over budget, and that is just spread across the county in different areas. So this is our pie chart. It shows 86% of our revenue has come from property taxes, other taxes 7%, charges for services of 4%, and other revenue of 3%. So now we'll go over to the expenditure side. And through May 31st, we have spent $45,902,392. $397, and that is $641,000 under budget or a positive variance. And these are the different categories here. I will go through them individually. The first category is law enforcement. We have spent $23,310,822. That is $807,000 under budget, and mostly in two categories, the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Corrections. But you will also notice that although we are under budget, we have spent more than last year. Next category is recreation. $7,924,589, and that is $34,000 under budget, so right on budget in that category. Next category is public works, $4,301,264. I'll remind you that these are just what has been spent out of the general fund, and that also is just right on budget. Next category is public health, $3,949,959, again, right on budget. Administrative services, $5,624,540. That is $233 over budget, and that is attributed to the $250,000 that are being used for reserves for capital outlay for this year. So other than that, we are right on budget in that category. And last is debt service, $791,223. That has not changed from last month either, because that is just the interest for the first half, and that is also right on budget. So this chart just shows the different categories. And then this last one is our pie chart that shows 51% of all of our expenditures were for law enforcement. Recreation is next with 17%, public works 9%, public health 9%, administrative services 12%, and debt service of 2%. Any questions?
Any questions for Betty? All right, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5, public comment.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, next item, please.
Item 6, administrative communications.
Any administrative communications? Seeing none, next item, please.
Item 7, executive session.
We do not have a need for executive session today, so we are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask you guys if you had any administrative communications. I guess, sorry about that.
No.
We've already adjourned, so I don't think we can add it, but.
Bill, you'll have to wait till next week.
You guys, there's only 6 people here, so if you want to talk to each of them individually,
Yeah.
go for it.